So today we are going to talk to you about amphibians. So amphibians is a really exciting class of animals that includes frogs and toads, salamanders and newts, and caecilians.
One thing that they all have in common is they have porous skin, and they're all found either in water or around water in wet areas. Reason we're wearing gloves today to handle these guys is not for our protection from them, but it's for their protection from us. Even though we already washed and rinsed our hands, we might still have some kind of oil or soap residue on our hands. So to make sure that they don't absorb it through their porous skin, that's why we wear the gloves. It's to protect them from our hands and anything that might be on them.
Amphibian comes from the Greek term, from the Greek words amphibio and bios. Amphibio means both, bios means life, so you put them together and it means both life. So it refers to their life cycle where they will lay their eggs in the water and they will live part of their life in the water, and then they'll transition to living their adult life on land. Thus, both areas. Alright, so the first group we're going to talk about is frogs and toads. So, frogs and toads are the most commonly known amphibians. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen these in your backyard. This specimen that we have right here is called a White's tree frog or dumpy tree frog.
They're called Dumpy's tree frog because if you look at him, he's quite plump, aka dumpy. So that's why they're known as Dumpy's tree frogs or White's tree frogs. This one here, his name is Trevor.
So, most frogs, like our friend Trevor here, live in moist areas, whereas toads are going to live in more dry areas. And thus, frogs have moist, smooth skin, and most toads are going to have dry, bumpy skin. So that's a way that you can tell them apart. The larval form of these guys is called a tadpole. Tadpoles have a round body with a straight tail that they use to propel themselves through the water. And they're going to eat a lot of vegetation and algae. As they start to morph out into their adult form, they're going to grow their back legs first, and then they'll grow their front legs. And then as they become more terrestrial or land-dwelling, they're going to absorb their tail. So as you can see, our friend Trevor here does not have a tail anymore because he absorbed it when he was a baby. Alright, so the next group that we're going to talk to you guys about is salamanders and newts. So this guy right here is going to help us out. Salamanders, as you can see, are amphibians that look a little more lizard-like. So they've got this nice long tail, they've got 4 legs, and this more elongated body. So these guys can be fully aquatic, or they might live their adult life on land. And these guys, when they're babies, are known as larvae. So a newt larva, or a salamander larva, actually looks a little more like a fish than a tadpole does. So it's a little more elongated, and it's got a flattened tail, more similar to a fish. And it's got little feathery projections off the side of its head, which are its gills. So these guys have what are called external gills, meaning their gills are outside of their body. Now, as they grow up and start to take on their adult form, they're going to grow their front legs first and then their back legs, so the opposite of how a tadpole would. And they'll also start to absorb those gills, so they'll actually get rid of those gills once they become terrestrial. And then they will retain their tail, as you can see. Kip has a nice little tail here, so they will retain their tail into adulthood.
There is, however, a group of salamanders, such as the axolotls, the amphibians, and the sirens, that keep their feathery gills as they grow into adulthood, and they just look like a bigger version of their baby selves when they're grown up with the feathery gills, and they stay fully aquatic.
Alright, so the last group of amphibians that we're going to talk to you about are caecilians. So caecilians are the least known group of amphibians. And these guys can be aquatic or terrestrial. The aquatic forms look a little like an eel, and the terrestrial forms actually are very worm-like in appearance. Now these guys can lay eggs or give live birth. In general, the aquatic ones are going to be laying eggs, and the terrestrial ones are going to give live birth. And unlike the other amphibians, these guys do not have a larval form. They're mostly going to be hatch out or be born just as miniature versions of an adult. Alright, so that is it for our amphibian session. There's a lot more to learn about amphibians though, so we encourage you to do some research. There's a lot of amphibians out there, and they're one of my favorite classes of animals just because of their diversity and all the craziness that ensues from them.
So if you want to learn more about animals like Trevor and Kip here, just go out there and keep learning. Bye guys.